So we plan to make it available on the UNEC Knowledge Hub on SDGs, and also those comments and questions coming in through the chat will be recorded. So you can use the chat also if you would like just to comment or add information on something, because we will keep this information. I will try to facilitate the running of the webinar from the technical side. With this, as it's a new thing, good luck to all of us. And I will stop sharing my screen now and turn over the floor to Lineke, who will moderate the webinar. So I'm just now making Lineke as a presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. I heard we had over 40 people listening and watching in, so that's very good news. As Tina said, we have a list of presentations. We have a very tight schedule. As Tina also said, for us it's the first time, so it's all a bit new, and we're going to have to see how it works as we go along. I would like to ask you to keep your presentation to 7 minutes. This will give us time to change the connections, the presentations between presenters, and get people ready for the next presentation. Okay, having said that, I would like to ask Elena from Belarus to share her content and give the first presentation.
So Elena, we can see your presentation. Please, please put it also on, like run the presentation, then it will show better.
Good morning, dear colleagues. When I start, I would like to present Belarusian experience about national partnership for the organization of SDGs monitoring. Okay? It's okay?
Can you speak a little bit louder or closer to the microphone?
To implement the goals and of 2030 agenda, Belarus has established an architecture for managing the process of achieving the SDGs. By national SDGs coordinator of the upper house of parliament. The current architecture includes the Council for Sustainable Development, advisory and consultative body with membership of government agencies and institutions. The parliamentary group on SDGs established to assess the impact of draft laws on established development process. The partnership group for sustainable development, working group on SDGs, the media coordination group for the promotion of SDGs, the public council for the sustainable development strategies, drafting and evaluation. Since monitoring as an integral process of the implementation of the sustainable development goals, Belstat is either directly member of this group and councils on actively participates in organization and development on the national system of monitoring and evaluation of SDGs. The national list of SDGs indicator was compiled by Belstat jointly with government agents, public organizations, research and business communities. When creating it, we proceeded from the position of maximum harmonization with the global list. Today, the national list includes 259 indicators, 149 of which correspond to the global list, and 110 proxy indicators reflecting on the national development priorities of the country. The data are produced by 26 government agencies and organizations, with Belstat being the key data producer, 99 indicators. The work on organizing of SDGs monitoring was arranged by Belstat in accordance with the recommendation of Conference of European Statisticians set up in the roadmap. It was this basis that Belstat prepared its own roadmap for the development of statistical SDGs. Also, in accordance with UNSC recommendation, the main tools for monitoring and dissemination of data on SDGs indicator in Belstat is the national platform for reporting SDGs. The national reporting platform was created with financial support with UNICEF and UNDP and was launched in late 28. The main requirement for its creation were multifunctionality and user-friendly. An intuitive user interface allows for uploading indicators and relate metadata without using any programming tools. To upload data to the platform, responsible data providers can choose the most convenient way for them to submit information. For example, the data can be uploaded by the provider through a personal account. For this purpose, last October, Belstat had a training seminar on how to work with platform for specialists of government agencies, which are providers of data on SDGs indicator. A data provider sent the update information to the moderator in Belstat via his personal account. After endorsing the data by the responsible department in Belstat, the moderator gives consent to publish the data of the platform. In case the data are incorrect, the moderator returns then to provider with the message about the reason of the return. Besides, the moderator has the possibility of viewing the provider's contact information with majority for completing when sending data to Belstat at many contacts he have for any clarification. As guidance, when posting the data on the platform, a schedule of data collection and updating approved annually. In order to reduce the reporting burden, the integration of the NIP with state information system and research is envisioned. That is, if the SDGs indicator in a state informational research system, the data will be uploaded automatically through API. There is also a possibility of placing hyperlink to document already published on the official website on the government agency. The platform is the platform is adapted to special data dissemination standard SDMX which will allow for facilitating the exchange of information of the international level. Last year, the state conducted a pilot exchange of data on SDGs indicator with International Labour Organization in SDMX format. Based on this experience gained, the platform functionality will be further refined to that data exchange can be automatically in the future. The national indicator framework continues to develop dynamically, including on the basis of proposals by stakeholders and competitive parties. To this end, the START website, as well as reporting platform, provides an opportunity for feedback. Among the direction of the national monitoring system developed, the following are most relevant today. Adoption of the adaptation of the national methodology for calculation SDGs indicator at the national level, work to ensure disaggregation data using new data sources. Taken into account the process in the development of the national methodology, will start jointly with the responsible government agencies. Is adopting global metadata to the national conditions. Thus, a year ago, 131 indicators of the national list correspond to the global level. And today, there are 149 such indicators. Following the main principles of the 2030 agenda to leave no one behind, the START carries out a great work on data disaggregation, which implemented through improving statistical reporting, conducting new surveys, and active collaboration of the START with government agencies to ensure the maximum level of disaggregation of data from the administrative registers. In order to use new data sources and data acquisition technologies, a working group on the use of spatial technology and GIS for monitoring SDGs was established at the initiative of the START and with support of national coordinator in collaboration with 5 ministries. Under the index of the work group, metadata for 7 indicators from the national list of SDGs indicator were developed and data calculated using space technology and DIS. In conclusion, I would like to note that the complexity and interlinkage of the SDGs obliges to cooperate and share knowledge to support their implementation and monitoring. It is the partnership what will ensure progress towards 2 SDGs and that one no is left behind. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Elena. Very interesting to see how you've combined a lot of organizations to work together to further the SDGs. Can I once again ask people who are not going to give a presentation to put out their video camera, because you're taking up too much streaming capacity. So everybody who's not giving a presentation, please disable the video. Then we go on to the next presentation, which is Monika Gorzelak from Statistics Poland. Monika, would you like to share your presentation with us?
Of course. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm afraid I can't see it. Perhaps I see the screen of the host. Okay.
Monica, if it doesn't work, I can run the presentation from here.
I'd love to. Thank you very much.
So just a moment. I will look it up. Then I have to make myself a presenter again. No. So that's your presentation.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much. So once again, good morning, everyone. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name's Monika Gorzelak. I'm from Statistics Poland, and I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you about Statistics Poland's practice in providing SDG indicators. My presentation is divided into two parts. I'll start with explaining how SDG data are pulled together on Statistics Poland's national reporting platform. And then I'll move on to take a closer look at SDG indicators for business in that context. So let me start with some general information on SDG data compiled and disseminated by Statistics Poland. Could you be so kind and move to the next slide, please? Am I allowed to do that?
Yes, please go ahead and talk. I moved to the, yeah, it just takes some time until it updates the slide on the WebEx. Yeah.
Obviously. Fine. So, so as to meet specific needs of associated with SDG. With the SDGs, in fact, Statistics Poland provides data that are provided to different groups of the 2030 agenda stakeholders, namely to enable the assessment of progress towards the SDGs on the global level. Statistics Poland provides data for the official UN indicators. Equally important for the purposes of monitoring SDGs on the national level, Statistics Poland has developed a set of national SDG indicators for monitoring national SDG priorities defined by Polish government. As a result, national SDG indicators, as opposed to the global ones, refer strictly to Poland's circumstances and specifics. There are about 120 national SDG indicators, and they monitor about 67 national SDG priorities. Last but not least, Statistics Poland has contributed to the development of business SDG indicators. But I will talk about them in detail in a moment. So to sum up, the three sets of SDG indicators that I've just mentioned, I mean the global, the national one, and business SDG indicators, are presented on Statistics Poland's national reporting platform. So the platform, in order to satisfy the needs of international organizations related to data standardization has been based on recommended open source solutions for reporting platforms. And furthermore, the Statistics Poland's national reporting platform has been customized to incorporate a general knowledge compendium on the SDGs to better communicate statistics for the global goals. All that you can see screen in front of you. The platform is available in two languages, the national one, which is Polish, and English, in order to meet the domestic and foreign user needs. To cut a long story short, the SDG data presented on the national reporting platform come from internal sources, which is the official statistics, and external sources, including line ministries, academia, and to some extent UN agendas. Could you move on to another slide, please? And now I will very briefly focus on business SDG indicators. So they are referred to as impact barometer. And these are 30 indicators monitoring 6 SDGs that have been recognized as most relevant for Polish business. Indicators are free to use by any company. And thanks to them, Polish companies are able to measure the individual contribution to the SDGs and to publish sustainability reports afterwards. What is crucial about the impact barometer is the fact that to calculate the indicators, companies use their own corporate microdata from their own data repositories, so not the official statistics from the NSO. To facilitate the calculations, companies are provided with some guidance and formulas in an Excel sheet. All they need to do is just to enter the variables, and then they instantly get the result. I mean, the indicator value. Individual results of the companies will be afterwards generalized, aggregated, and used for making some SDG benchmarks for Polish companies. Could you move on to the next slide, please? And finally, I would like to finish with a very short instruction on how to use impact barometer. So all you need to do is to download the impact barometer from its official website. Then you need to enter well, the variables into the Excel sheet. Finally, you get the results, which you send to the developers of impact barometer in order to enable collective analysis of the individual results and making aggregations. Well, needless to say, you also publish your individual results in the form of a, for example, sustainability report. Then you can analyze your results and compare them to the benchmark as soon as it is made available. And hopefully, you plan actions to improve your results next year. Thank you for your attention. So in the next presentation, I will talk more about the process of the development of the indicators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Exactly 7 minutes. That's just what I'm looking for.
I'm glad.
Next on the list is Natalia Ignatova. Natalia, I understand you're connected by telephone. Natalia, can you hear us? Okay, so maybe better to go on to Spain. What do you think, Tina? Would
Yes, I think we go on to Spain. That means just a moment, I will stop sharing the screen from here and we'll make no, a presenter. Yes, please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share the PowerPoint presentation. Well, I'm going to explain to you briefly how is the national reporting platform, how we manage to pull all the SDGs indicators together. Spain launched the National Reporting Platform in December 2018 to put together all SDG indicators available for Spain. And this was not the first time we collect all SDGs indicators. We had made it before for the, on occasion of the statistical annex of the National Voluntary Report. The dissemination of the information in the National Reporting Platform follow or is based on the structure of the 2030 agenda. We have the goals, targets, indicator, and the sub-indicator that are available for Spain. Then we have put on the first screen the data in the base period is the year 2015, since it was the year of the adoption of the 2030 agenda. And we also show the latest period available to know if we are going in the right direction. We also indicate who is the organism responsible for the indicator. About 40% of them are provided by NSI, and the others come from ministries of other public organizations. We also have another column on detailed results, the possible download tables, and methodology. Just clicking on the graphic symbol, we can see this type of bank of this time series from the year 2008 to see what is the trend of the indicator in the last decade. This type of series from the year 2008 is available for indicators provided by INE, and sometimes ministries have provided shorter periods. But the idea is to show not only the last data, but also the trend in the last time. Then we have this type of time series. Clicking on detailed results, and when the information is available, we have built this type of tables in which disaggregated data are provided by age, sex, and autonomous community. But not all the indicators can be broken down in this detail. We are working to improve the breakdown of the information, but sometimes it's not so easy. We have some data gaps, and by now we have 110 global indicators. We adapt as much as possible to United Nations metadata, those that have been developed by the IAG group. And we have some data gaps, but in other cases, we have more than two sources for the same indicator. In this case, we try to disseminate just one indicator, and we choose that source that fits better to United Nations metadata. As regards the coordination to put together all the indicators, we have a permanent body, which is the Interministerial Commission of Statistics, and this has been the main tool to be in contact with the different statistical departments in the ministries and to obtain the indicators that are better adapted to the United Nations metadata. And we have a close and continuous contact, and the relation with them has been quite good to be able to disseminate all these indicators. And we have developed a web application by which they can update directly the indicators of their responsibility. It's completely sure, and when they have a new release, they can update the indicator. So it's much faster and avoid some time of errors. At regional level, with the autonomous community, we have a working group in which we are working on methodological aspects about how we have produced indicator with the aim that they can also reproduce similar calculation and to have more indicators available. And concerning global coordination, the National Report of Spain has been designed in a similar way or structure as the found. So it will allow in the future the automation of data transmission to the custodian agency following SDMX format. This way, we could avoid or limit the current transmission by means of questionnaire that are quite impose a burden both for the custodian agencies and both for the national offices. So we think in the future it would be limited or reduced. And this way, the transmission, the automatic transmission is processing and updating the data and facilitate that international database contain the same data for a country that the national platform. Finally, I would like to mention that during this year, we are going to work on visualization tools to make the platform more friendly. We are going to improve also the disaggregation by regional or territorial disaggregation mainly. And also another point we are working is in increasing the number of indicators available, because now we have 100 global indicators and about 300 sub-indicators. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anna. Again, another example of how people are combining different sources and get good ways to get the information onto their own websites. It's very interesting to see how people are tackling this. The last presentation in this first half of the session is from Switzerland, Anna Busch. Anna had some problems sharing her content, but I think Tina is going to do that from UNECE.
Mm-hmm.
The floor is yours.
Okay, so hello everyone. I am Anne Busch from the Federal Statistical Office here in Switzerland. What I'm going to present you is the national monitoring system for Agenda 2030, which is not exactly the same as the IAG indicators, the national version of it. I will just mention how we coordinate for the provision of data for the international indicators. But the main focus of the presentation will be about how we set up this MONE 2030 indicator system, which is meant to monitor Agenda 2030 in Switzerland. So, Tina, you can go already to the next slide, please. I'm not sure whether you see the next slide. As for me, I'm still in the, oh, okay. So now you can go to the next one. I guess it's a coordination thing. Yeah, thank you, perfect. This process of setting up this monitoring system for Agenda 2030 at the national level, no, the slide before. The one before. It involved more than 120 experts over the whole federal administration, and even in some cases at the cantonal level, so the regional level in Switzerland. And they defined exactly the same amount of international targets, but the Swiss version. So we have 169 national targets. And we have 103 indicators that monitor not all of these 169 national targets, but only 77 of them. So I would explain you a little bit why. But now we can go to the next slide, which describes how we went from our original Sustainable Development Monitoring System, which is called MONE, which basically means Monitoring Sustainable Development in German. And MONE was created back at the beginning of the years 2000, in 2003. And it was based on a tailor-made operationalization of the definition of sustainable development, because there was at that time no sustainable development strategy or any other kind of policy documents that we could use for that. So we operationalized this definition in the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, and then in around 45 principles of sustainable development, on which the indicators were based. And at the beginning of the years 2000, we had about 130 indicators. We then revised the system. We had 75 indicators, which were presented according to 12 topics. And from this basis, we made a transformation of the system, a massive transformation, to reach the MONET 2030 indicator system, which was presented in 2019, and which is based on an operationalization of sustainable development, which is the SDGs, plus some Swiss specificities such as social cohesion, mobility topics, and these kind of topics. And we now have 103 indicators for this monitoring system, which is presented according to the 17 SDGs. But we also have a transversal set of indicators about spillovers, for example, or about gender issues. You can go to the next slide, Tina. The next slide is about the toolbox that we use, which may sound very technical, but it's actually soft tools that we used for this process, for collaboration between with the statisticians and the policymakers who were involved in this process. So first of all, for us, it is really important that we manage to set up a culture of dialogue, of cooperation, of co-construction, which basically involves a lot of trust between the partners. And also to have this trust, we have predefined rules of the game, which means who decides what, who has to say what on which aspect of the process. And the process, of course, is clearly defined, and the decisions are well documented. This is also very important, and also very important that we respect the specific role of each actor. Policymakers are responsible for setting targets, for example, and we as statisticians have to be respected in our independence and neutrality. It is also based on the fact that we recognize that we share knowledge and skills. Not everyone knows everything about everything. And of course, we can rely on a large and a robust statistical basis, which is the national statistical system in the country. And now you can go to the next slide, which describes the process in itself, how we set up, how we translated the international targets in Swiss targets. So, and here it's interesting to see the different roles with the statisticians and of the policymakers. So first, what we did is to document what exists in Swiss policies. We means the statisticians. We documented what exists in the Swiss policies that is relevant for each of the international targets. For example, we analyze, of course, the Sustainable Development Strategy, but also policy documents on, for example, biodiversity. We have a biodiversity strategy. We have a policy document on research and innovation, and so on and so on. It is a very a work that is happening at a very detailed level. So for each of the 169 targets, there was a fact sheet describing what kind of national policy document is relevant and what kind of law and which paragraph of the law is relevant. And all this documentation was then submitted and discussed with the relevant experts from the federal administration in small groups per topic. And on this basis, these policymakers defined the Swiss targets for Agenda 2030. And the aim was actually that we have exactly the same number of targets, so that there is some kind of coherence to the international level. And also, these information are used for the baseline reports. So now we can say, okay, we have these and these policies that are relevant for the SDGs. But for the statisticians, it was also very important that we were involved in this process, because then on this basis, we defined the Swiss indicators. In order to do this, we, of course, looked at what was already existing. So the MONA indicators that were already in place since the beginning of the years 2000, plus other indicators, such as the one that we have to measure the goals of the Swiss government. And also, of course, the IAG indicators and other available indicators at the regional level and other things like that. And we defined the Swiss indicators. There were 103 of them. And this is what is now constituting the monitoring of the Agenda 2030 for Switzerland. In addition to this, we also have coordinated the flow of data from the decentralized various, excuse me, for the various, from the various units of the federal administration who deliver data for the IAG indicators directly to the custodian agencies in the United Nations system. So it basically is like this: the units in the federal administration deliver data, but the coordination happens at the federal level, in the sense that we have a process which describes who is delivering what to whom and whether it was done or not. So this is pretty well coordinated, and thus we have two things. We have the data for the IAG indicators, which is not published otherwise at the Swiss level, and we have the Agenda 2030 monitoring system, which is MONA 2030 system. So this is all for me. Thank you for your attention.
So shall we try with Natalia again?
Okay, can you hear me still? I couldn't unmute my mic, so thank you very much, Anna. I recognize a lot from what we're doing in the Netherlands. We had a system in place and trying to adapt it to the IAG indicators. It's a lot of work. So I recognize a lot from your presentation. I understand that Natalia has now joined us. Natalia, can you hear us? Natalia? Yeah, I don't think it's going to work, so maybe we should move on to the questions. Stella, do you have news from Natalia?
I don't have any news from Natalia, except for the fact that she said that she will connect. She was hearing us, what we were saying, but we did not hear anything from her. Okay. Probably if we cannot connect with her, we can try by the end of the webinar, but also we will make her presentation available together with the others, if the connection is not okay anyway.
Yes, okay, good idea. Okay, so we are quite on time. We have a few minutes for questions. I see that for people who are not following the chat, there are a lot of questions coming in on the chat. People asked if Monica could make available the indicator she used for the business impact monitor. And she's put a link on the chat. So
yes.
This will all be included. So we're recording the webinar for people who were not following the chat. We're recording the webinar, and we're also going to save the chat, and this will also be made available. So everything that's said on the chat and all the links that are given there will be available, and also everything will be available on the wiki on the SDG Hub. The links on there as well. We have a question for Anne, I see here, from very small letters, these, Iblin Roman. She says, thank you, Anne, very nice presentation. One question, were other stakeholders other than policymakers included in the process of deciding on the indicators and targets? And would you like to answer that?
Yes, do you hear me? So the idea is basically it's mainly policymakers. Then when the national targets were set, there was an internal and a public consultation on the national targets. So basically representatives from the NGOs, from the local governments and any other people could have their voice in this respect. But this was rather about the targets. The discussion about the choice of the indicators was rather restricted to the federal administration.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting here talking without my microphone on. Thank you. I think your answer was also the answer to the next question from Ala, which also asked about CSO and other stakeholders. I don't see any other questions yet on the chat. If you have a question, put it on the chat, and then we'll be able to read it out. I myself have a question for Monica. I think you have, with the work that you're doing, you have a lot of information from businesses. Do you yourself compare the businesses, and how did you make because you said the businesses can compare to the benchmark, but how did you make the benchmark they compare themselves to? And I was wondering if you yourself then sort of compile statistics on businesses in this data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for your question. So I must highlight that impact barometer is very young. It's only 6 months old, in fact. And we are planning to define benchmarks and to calculate aggregates based on the individual results of the companies. And because it's such a young initiative, and as I've said, only 6 months old, we are waiting for the results, and we are planning to, in collaboration with CSR Consulting that initiated the whole project, which I will talk about in detail in a moment, hopefully. We are planning to publish it, to conduct some collective analysis based on the individual results. Then we will make some aggregations and probably some benchmarks, I mean some means for the market that later companies will be able to use for comparisons among them. Yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question. Yeah, shall I add anything?
No, thank you. That's what I would. I just wondered if you have that information available. But obviously, the more you get, the more you can, the better the benchmark will be, and the better.
We are planning to publish the report in September. However, due to the circumstances, probably it will be postponed.
Okay. It's quite interesting. I need, but I think that question. I have another question for after your presentation this afternoon, because we have a lot of. I myself have a lot of experience in working alongside the private sector, but we have a lot of. We get a lot of comments about working with the private sector. So things, like sponsorship, and if you're doing that for a certain. But I think that's a question which will be more relevant for your presentation in the next session.
Thank you.
We have another question here for Monica on the chat. It says, could you please comment on the reason to choose only 6 SDGs for business? And this is from Evelyn Roman again.
Okay, fine. So, 6 SDGs have been recognized as most relevant for Polish business by SDG experts in Poland. last year, and it's just a starting point. Well, the set is open. As I said, it's new. We are waiting for individual results and for the feedback from the companies. And probably if there is a need and if the experts decide that we should include more SDGs, we will do that. Yes, so as I've said, it's just a starting point.
Okay, I think that answers the question. Just have a look at the time here. If we have no more questions on the chat, I had a question for Belarus. Elena, if you're still online. I think we saw you had quite a complex setup of all these people who are contributing data to your SDG reporting platform, and I wondered how you managed to keep in touch with everybody. Do you have regular meetings with these people, and is it a sort of fluid? Can other contributors join, or is this a set of just 26 people contributing, and that's going to remain like that? Eleanor, are you still online? Okay, obviously not.
Do you hear us? Do you hear us?
We hear, but very quiet. Could you be closer to the microphone and maybe talk a little bit louder?
Yeah. Okay, we will probably have to interpret this. So Elena will speak Russian, and I will try to interpret.
Yes,
Дается связь держать, да,
у нас как бы есть 26 производителей.
So we have 26 producers.
Information. И каждого из них есть личный кабинет.
So each producer has a personal account in our national reporting platform.
И есть связь с платформой.
And each producer is connected with the platform of Belstat through his personal account. And we have trained these producers, these data providers, in order to have good connection. And we also have a moderator who coordinates all this work.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. Maybe we could communicate more by email about this, because I'm quite interested.
Okay. Yes.
We have two more questions on the chat which I would like to ask, and then I think we'll wrap this part of the session up. UNDP Istanbul Regional Hub would like to ask Anna from Switzerland. I liked when you mentioned the connection of statistical indicators with those of indicators in national development programs. Is there any desire to integrate SDG indicators into national development planning for monitoring progress? And is there any thinking around bringing up Ministry of Finance into this work to see how budgets are aligned with SDGs? Anna, could you comment on that?
Yes, as I am not now personally involved in the process, so I'm not maybe not the latest information on this, but as far as I know, the idea is really that we stick to the monitoring program that we have now that is specific to Switzerland, and the SDG indicators are something separate. So as far as I know, the answer is no, but this is a very interesting issue that I will transmit to my colleagues. And I think there's also another question about setting the values for the intermediary and final targets. that I'm trying to answer now. So the targets, when we say targets, it does not necessarily mean quantified targets with a date to achieve them. I mean, it's as soft as the targets, the international ones. So basically, for example, we have a target for the nitrogen load, and it's about just decreasing inputs of nitrogen from air and water. It doesn't say how much and until when. So no, basically, it's just the policymakers defining this kind of targets on the basis of already existing targets in policy documents.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. That's answered the second question as well. We have another question from Ala, which says to all speakers, what approaches have been used to select adequate level of disaggregation? I think we could talk for hours about this, so I'm not going to start the discussion now, but I think this would be useful if people, we're going to, as I said, we're saving the chat, if we could do this by email. So it's now 11 o'clock, which means we're right on time for the start of the last set of presentations. And I would like to start with Leila Sturuya from Georgia. Leila, are you online?
Excuse me, this is not here.
And can you share your presentation with us? Leila, are you with us?
Excuse me, this is Natalia. Can you hear me?
Natalia.
Yes.
Okay, I don't hear Leila, but I do see and hear Natalia. So maybe this would be a good time to let her do her presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Natalia, we can't hear you very well. Can you get closer to the microphone or put up your volume?
I will try. I participate from my mobile phone. This is the third device I would like to participate in this meeting.
Okay, I think we are able to share your presentation from Geneva. So Tina will do the presentation if you can do the talking.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And stay close to the microphone.
Okay, okay. Can I start?
Yep.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share with you our experience on monitoring and dissemination of SDG statistics in the Russian Federation. In Russia, we have a decentralized statistical system. The majority of federal authorities work with international organizations independently in their statistical domain. That's why we have a set of coordination tools for official statistics at the national level. Federal Plan of Statistical Works is one of them. It is a detailed list of all official statistical activities in our country, adopted by the government and are obligatory for execution. Россtat is a coordinating body of the Federal Plan of Statistical Works and acts as a focal point on SDG monitoring in Russia. A special section for SDG has been integrated into the Federal Plan of Statistical Works. Nowadays, it consists of 90 SDG indicators of Tier 1 and Tier 2 from the Global Indicator Framework. 54 of them are calculated by Россtat and other 36 indicators are calculated by other 18 Russian federal authorities. In the nearest future, we are planning to include another 13 indicators into the Federal Plan of Statistical Works. Next slide. All official statistics produced within the Federal Plan of Statistical Works is to be uploaded to the Unified Interdepartmental Statistical Information System. This is next slide. Shortly, UNISYS. UNISYS is a key data dissemination channel in our country since 2011. Currently, it contains official statistics for more than 6,000 indicators from 65 Russian federal authorities. Special SDG domain has been activated in the UNICEF immediately after the creation an SDG section in the Federal Plan of Statistical Works. All authorities provide information in accordance with the determined timeline. Published data are accompanied by metadata and contact information. Yeah, this slide. Please, the next slide. However, UNICEF is already fading into the background due to moral and technical obsolescence. Currently, a digital analytical platform is being developed in Russia. Slide number 4. The digital analytical platform is one of the key elements of the National Data Management System created as a part of the state program Digital Economy. The purpose of creating the platform is the transition to a new structural and functional model, production and dissemination of statistical data in Russia. This model should implement the principles of a unified statistical data space, one-time uploading of statistical data, and its subsequent reuse for different purposes. The implementation of the platform is planned to be completed by the end of 2021. The functionality of the digital analytical platform includes automatic data transmission in accordance with the statistical data metadata exchange SDMX. Actually, Eurostat is actively working on the implementation SDMX at the national level. We actively participate in all kinds of UN EC pilot the mix exchange. Russia is a member of IG's working group on SDMX. In September last year, we participated in the approbation of SDG DSD version 1.0 and prepared a data package in SDMX format for 53
Natalia, we can't hear you anymore.
Slide of my presentation. SDG on the Eurostat website. In order to provide informational support for the SDG monitoring process at the national level, a special section for SDG has been created on the Eurostat website. It can be used by a wide variety of users interested in SDG data and metadata. The section contains general information on SDG, a detailed list of SDG indicators with the current status of their development at the national level, metadata for SDG indicators translated into Russian, up-to-date information on activities at the national and international levels, upcoming events, links to useful information, documents on SDG. By the way, at the end of last year, Eurostat released the first statistical publication on the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in the Russian Federation, which included indicators from the global SDG framework, national SDG set, and indicators from national projects in order to fully cover all goals and the tasks from the Agenda 2030. The publication is prepared in Russian and English languages and available on the Eurostat website. This year, we plan to release an expanded publication of SDG by including data on Russian regions. That's all from my side. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Can you unmute me?
You are not muted from my side, Linaka.
Oh, okay.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, Natalia. It was a bit difficult to hear. I hope it was just my problem, but it looks very interesting, and I see you provided the link. So maybe if people want to know more, they can go online and see it. Good to see you anyway. I hope you're doing well. Now, do we have Leila available from Georgia?
I can see that Leila is connected and I made her just a presenter. Leila, please go ahead.
Leila, can you hear us? I think she must be having problems somewhere. I see she's online as well. But...
Yes. We can continue with the next one.
Yes, Alison from Scotland. Are you with us?
I am indeed. I'll just connect my
Welcome.
presentation.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, perfect. Hi, thank you very much for here today. I'm the research officer at the Scottish Human Rights Commission, but my job today is speaking on behalf of ENRI, which is the European Network of Human Rights Institutions. And my presentation is going to focus on the added value that partnership with NHRI's, National Human Rights Institutions, can bring in policy making informed by human rights-based data. As part of the 2030 agenda, states reaffirmed their commitment to international law and implementation of the SDGs in line with human rights obligations of the states. And NHRIs are independent state-mandated bodies with a broad human rights mandate. They monitor the human rights situation at the national level and report against states' international human rights commitments. We also act as bridges between rights holders, civil society, and state actors. And through our investigation, complaints handling, and legal assistance functions, we have a unique access to rights holders and are able to collect a lot of qualitative data that helps to inform policymakers about situations on the ground and lived experience. And of particular relevance in relation to today's discussion, NHRIs are expected to advise their parliaments and governments on relevant policies, legislation related to their human rights obligations. And based on the Office of the High Commissioner's guidance in a human rights-based approach to data, this short presentation will explore some of the added value of building partnerships with NHRIs and show what these can bring to human rights-informed policy action for accelerating progress towards the SDG implementation. And I'll do this with providing some case examples from a number of ENRI members. So starting with participation, a human rights-based approach to data indicates that it's really important to include the participation of relevant population groups in data collection exercises. That includes in planning, in data collection, dissemination, as well as analysis of data. And a couple of examples of what NHRIs frequently do include setting up participatory processes and seeking advice from individuals and rights holders when designing human rights indicators, using these to report to international bodies and providing information to policy makers. They also maintain regular contact with rights holders, receiving support on NHRI boards, councils and advisory bodies that are set up to help direct NHRIs in their work and prioritisation. And one example of this is in Belgium, an ENRI member, the Combat Poverty, Insecurity and Social Exclusion Service, has formulated policy recommendations based on the qualitative data collected throughout the series of dialogues with people living in poverty and a wide variety of other stakeholders. The institution involved people living in poverty to improve indicators on assessing poverty in Belgium. Second is the data disaggregation. So as you'll all be aware, disaggregation of data allows data users to compare population groups and to understand the situations of specific groups. And disaggregation requires that data on relevant characteristics are collected. And examples of what NHRIs frequently do include collecting detailed information, often through qualitative data, about rights holders' situations as part of their investigation and complaints handling functions. They can also make recommendations to state authorities and consult statistical offices, underlining the different situations of different groups and advising on methods of data disaggregation by providing things like training for statistical offices. A couple of examples here include in the UK, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, who have engaged with the UK's SDG monitoring process through direct consultation with their Office for National Statistics, ONS, to improve the quality of national data collection around inequality and discrimination. And they recommended to ONS that they make SDGs relevant to the domestic context, including finding appropriate data sources. They also suggested pursuing disaggregation of SDG data by as many protected characteristics as possible, and to include data on people at higher abuse, discrimination, or disadvantage. They suggested involving civil society actors in the development of national indicators. And the NHRI also sits on the technical advisory group for ONS, the Centre for Equalities and Inclusion, which brings together stakeholders in equality data to improve the relevant evidence base. It's also working to influence the forthcoming 2021 UK census to representation of protected groups, social attitude survey to gather new information on national prejudice. The second example comes from the Danish Institute of Human Rights as part of their data partnership with National Statistics Office, contributing to their work with data collection for the SDG project, particularly on disability data, and the development of new local targets following the SDGs. Data collectors are also accountable for upholding human rights in their operations, and data should also be used to hold states and other actors to account on human rights issues. And examples here of what NHRIs frequently do include using international and legal frameworks to hold states accountable for their policies and action plans to implement SDGs, as well as their implementation and ensuring that they're based on human rights. They also work with individuals, national statistics offices, and academic institutions to design a monitor progress on SDG implementation. Example here comes from my own commission, where we've developed a monitoring framework for our National Action Plan on Human Rights, SNAP, which was based on good practice from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And SNAP makes explicit connections with the SDGs. And we drew particularly on the Human Rights Guide to the SDGs produced by the Danish National Human Rights Institution. And our first plan ran for 4 years, ending in 2017. But although the plans are 4 years, the longer term goals were deliberately set to reflect the 2030 timeline of the SDG, so that our long-term outcomes reflect the SDG outcomes. And the second version of SNAP, which is due to be published later this year, will show how and to what extent the different SNAP actions will help support the delivery of the SDGs. Finally, we have the issue of the plurality of methodologies of data collection that go beyond classic household surveys. And this is important because to fully understand human rights concerns, this is best achieved through a combination of research methodologies. Survey numbers can show indications of gravity of a situation, but they also can hide intolerable experiences by smaller, unseen and easy to ignore populations. And as there is evidence that some of the household surveys do miss certain groups, NHRIs are particularly well placed to develop alternative methodologies to household surveys in cooperation with researchers, civil society, social services and national statistical offices. They can also provide human rights-based training to surveyors and national statistical offices to encourage a better understanding of the limitations of household surveys. And they can also conduct activities to meet with vulnerable groups who may not be identified by household surveys, for example, through monitoring or field visits, in close cooperation with local actors such as NGOs or communities which may have better access to these individuals. An example here again from my own commission was that in developing our National Action Plan, we created an evidence base that we did this following on from looking at secondary data from surveys and other people's qualitative research and national statistics, we also undertook local and national participation processes with particularly marginalised communities across Scotland in order to identify key human rights concerns from their lived experience to ensure that their voices were heard. And this data was used both to inform our National Action Plan, but also to support the development of Scotland's contribution to last summer's UK VNR contribution. So overall, we'd say that NHRIs take a human rights-based approach to data, and in doing so, they bring particular strengths to any partnerships that are engaged in policy making. A key aspect of many of our mandates is to ensure that the voices of the most marginalised, those who are left behind, are actually heard in policy discussions. And this is the particular added value I believe that the partnership with NHRIs can bring in policy making for the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much, Alison. I see that the Danish Institute for Human Rights is being active on the chat with a lot of information and a link to their handicap barometer. And I expect there will be some questions about that. It's nice to see how you're incorporating this data with the official ONS statistics as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think just between the presentations, I would like to ask Claire in Paris to mute her microphone because she's getting a lot of interference. Now, if you can hear me, can you mute your microphone? The next presentation, we're going to try Leila again from Georgia.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Leila. Welcome.
Ah, okay. Good. Finally.
Finally. Can you share your presentation with us?
Can someone help me from there with the presentation?
We can. Tina can help you from Geneva.
Yes, okay, just a moment. So I will put on your presentation from here. And just to warn you that for some reason there is a delay with when I'm changing the slides from here. Sometimes it takes quite
it's okay. It's okay.
Maybe even like 20-30 seconds until it changes on the screen.
Okay, it's manageable. Okay. So my presentation is on data about lead contamination for a comprehensive package of regulations and measures in Georgian Government Action Plan. So next slide, please. So lead contamination is global public health problem, and it's one of the most dangerous toxicants with devastating long-term effects on environment, economic development, and public health. And it is among the top 10 chemicals of major public health concern globally. Lead poisoning can lead to developmental, behavioral, and neurological disorders, anemia, tiredness, and so on. People can become exposed to lead through occupational and environmental sources. This mainly results from inhalation or ingestion. So lead is quite a big obstacle to achieve SDGs. For example, goal 3, which is good health and well-being. And for example, lead exposure accounted for more than 1 million deaths and loss of about 25 million disability-adjusted life years. It's also responsible about 64% of idiopathic developmental intellectual disability, 10% of hypertensive heart disease, 6% of stroke, and so on. Exposure of pregnant women of high lead levels can cause also miscarriage, stillbirth, and so on. It is very much connected to Goal 1, no poverty, and Goal 10, reduced inequality. As you may know, over 90% of lead-affected individuals live in low middle-income countries like Georgia, where even in developed countries, children living in poverty are more likely to get exposed, further impairing their chance of upward social mobility and reinforcing vicious circle of intergenerational poverty. It's very much connected to goal 6, clean water, and goal 14 and 15, life below water and on land. And lead can be bioaccumulate in soil, flora, fauna, and marine life. And also it can be in drinking water supply, sometimes even in developed countries. Goal 7, clean energy, sustainable cities with Goal 11. Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. Lead acid batteries, if not properly disposed, household or industrial paint, as well as petrol with lead additive, construction and materials, and so on. They can become a source of human lead exposure. Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. Often lead is an occupational health hazard affecting people whose work is related to battery recycling, smelting, and so on. And the economic effect of lead exposure is well documented and calculated in developed countries, showing that investment in prevention of lead exposure is one of the most cost-beneficial public health interventions. In this slide, there are graphs from the multiple indicator cluster survey, and the national response for reducing lead exposure in Georgia is coordinated by the National Center for Disease Control and Public Health I represent to which. And upon our request, UNICEF Georgia designed a human biomonitoring module and integrated it into the mixed survey. The survey was implemented in 2018 with NCDC and National Statistics Office of Georgia, and this module involved venous blood collection from children to 7-year-old in mixed participant households, and we got more than 1,600 venous blood samples, and the survey revealed that 41% of children nationwide had blood lead levels more than 5 microgram per deciliter, and 16% more than 10 microgram per deciliter. So immediate national response was coordinated by our center in collaboration with the National Environmental Agency under the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture of Georgia. Based on recommendation from US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and American Academy of Pediatricians, Ministry of Health approved clinical protocol of early identification of toxic effect of lead in children and management measures. Also, as an immediate response, 16 children with blood lead level more than 30 microgram per deciliter and their members and members of their families were tested by NCDC Pediatricians National Environmental Agency. Also, mixed study revealed that lead poisoning is prevalent in the country, and therefore there is an urgent need to investigate various environmental factors in order to identify potential sources. And that's why we communicated with organization Poor Earth, which has multiple years of expertise for doing research on environmental and associated effects. And the results of their study was that lead-containing paints are not prevalent in the country. Soil pollution is also at low level. Water is not a source of exposition, but spices containing lead are very prevalent, and in some cases concentrations are extremely high. Blood lead level varies with the lead contamination level and period in spices, which indicates spices should be considered as the main source of lead poisoning. To come up with a national response, the Prime Minister of Georgia created an intergovernmental working group on environment and health, which is consisted of ministries of health, economic, environment, and other agencies in order to prevent and control lead poisoning. They already endorsed National Environmental and Health Action Plan. In March 2019, Environmental Health Action Plan Intersectorial Coordination Council meeting was done, and under the leadership of Prime Minister, and various agencies were given relevant assignments. In April 2019, there was government order on early identification of toxic effect of lead in children and management measures. We had WHO mission visited in July 2019 and had various roundtable discussions and trainings on awareness raising communication campaign with involvement of all interested stakeholders. Intensive work was done on lead poisoning control strategy and multi-sectorial extended 2020-2030 action plan. Aim of the project is to identify all possible sources of lead, ensuring raw material and product safety and harmonization of Georgian legislation for all the components associated with possible lead poisoning sources to the Euro Directive concerning safety. Enforcement of the activities is given to the responsibility of different ministries of Georgia. Lead component is also under the 2019 Health Protection State Program, and all children participating in the survey, members of their families up to 18 years of age, and pregnant women were tested, treated, and given relevant recommendations. Also, a subcomponent on the health and environment was added to the health promotion state program, and lead was one of the priority directions, and various activities were done in the frame of the component. 2020 early disease detection and screening state program includes blood lead level biomonitoring component with a budget of 1 million Georgian lari, and component includes referring children under age of 7 by pediatrician and general practitioner according to the symptoms revealed to be tested to lead poisoning. Also, they are 18 years or younger, and pregnant women, family members. Future plan is that Georgia continues working on identifying potential sources of lead poisoning, which is very important. We are actively working with United Nations, Children's Foundation, WHO, Public Health England, CDC Atlanta, and with other state and non-state agencies and experts. Together with international partners, there was a formed supervisory coordination team to efficiently coordinate current and future work conducted on discovering lead exposition factors and lowering their influence on the population. In collaboration with Public Health England, we have conducted small isotope ratio study, and we are waiting for the results from Public Health England. With UNICEF country office, a state-of-the-art laboratory capable measurement pollutants in product, human and environmental specimens is decided to be established. We are now in a process of designing a study on major lead exposure as well. All these activities of regulation and inspection, strengthening harmonization of Georgian legislation for all components associated with possible lead poisoning sources to the Euro Directive. As of today, new regulation on toys was introduced. Comprehensive communication requires extensive research and multi-agency approach, and if state implements adequate intervention, it is possible to reduce blood lead level and to achieve the SDGs. And I want to thank you all and wish you all the success in battle with coronavirus.
We stay in Georgia and we go to Ekaterina. If she's present.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Would you like to share your presentation with us?
Yes, with help of Tina. Colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to address you and discuss this crucially important issue for all of us. Today, I have the honor to speak on behalf of the Status National Human Rights Institution, the Office of Public Defender of Georgia. And I would like to share our practical information, how we collect and use data in our advocacy work. Our institution pays special attention to gender equality and women's rights situation in the country. We closely monitor the integration process of SDGs into national development plans and policy documents and their implementation. We have been recording and analyzing statistics related to sex gender-based discrimination, including sexual harassment since 2014. This was the result of the adoption of the law of Georgia on the elimination of all forms of discrimination, despite the fact that the provision on prohibition of sexual harassment became part of Georgian anti-discrimination legislation only in 2019, our office started to keep the data since the adoption of the law in 2014. Statistical information is collected on the basis of complaints lodged before the Equality Department of our office and through other sources such as public media, information from NGOs or activists, or identified while examining other cases. This enables us to approach these incidents in a proactive manner, and in addition to that, such practice proactivity contributes to gaining a more extensive picture of alleged sexual harassment cases in the country. Next slide, please. And on the other hand, recording existing statistics serves as an important tool to analyze and generalize the issue of sexual harassment. The data is disaggregated inter alia by the forms of sexual harassment. This includes the content of a deed, what happened, in what action harassment was revealed, how the unwanted nature of a conduct was stated by the victim, and what was the status of the perpetrator, or what was the relationship status between the parties, and etc. After that, this information is reflected in the special and annual reports of our office. A segregation of the data contributes to the identification of indicators of sexual harassment, and that serves as a tool to develop a good practice and case law in Georgia. On the other hand, it operates as an awareness-raising instrument to educate the wider public about the importance of the issue. But still, the most valuable result of data and statistics are the legislative changes of February and May 2019. It is worth noting that in 2014, the bill on sexual harassment was initiated by the MPs. However, no actual facts or statistics were available at that time. As a result, the bill was not adopted by the parliament. But in 2019, recording and disaggregating the data enabled us to successfully advocate for legislative changes. When the first women raised their voices about alleged facts of sexual harassment, society, including high officials and members of the parliament, we are skeptical about the existence and scope of this issue. After demonstrating relevant figures, some members of the Gender Equality Council of the Parliament of Georgia started to raise and popularize this issue among other MPs. And before the adoption of the amendments, during several working meetings that we attended by MPs, representatives of state agencies and other stakeholders, we regularly stressed the importance of collecting disaggregated data on sexual harassment. And when we backed our arguments with relevant data, opponents had barely anything to say. So luckily, the process ended with the adoption of comprehensive legislation prohibition sexual harassment in Georgia. And another area where we successfully use our statistical data is the communication process, is like educational activities. The society in Georgia mostly doesn't recognize sexual harassment as a significant or widespread problem. The more we use our data, more effectively we demonstrate the problematic character of the issue, and like we convince the audience, namely police officers, representatives of self-governing bodies, labor inspectors, teachers, journalists, and etc. And this contributes to building cooperation with the stakeholders so they can spread relevant information with their communities, implement their knowledge in practice, or refer to us for consultations. Next slide, please. Yes, and generally, we often underline the need to adopt and implement a unified methodology that will enable law enforcement authorities and the courts to collect and analyze the data on violence against women and domestic violence. In 2016, with the kind support of UN Women, we created femicide monitoring mechanism, Femicide Watch, and we analyze data in this field, like gender-related killings of women in Georgia. Every year, we prepare special reports and provide detailed analysis about the figures of femicide cases. And this data is used as a tool of successful advocacy for legislative changes. For example, last year, femicide was defined as an aggravating circumstance of killing in our criminal law, and risk assessment methodology was adopted and used by the police and etc. It has been proved that advocacy through data on femicide is important and effective for the prevention of the crime by improving national policy and protective mechanisms for the victims. To sum up, the methods for data collection elaborated by us proved to be very valuable for analyzing and generalizing the issue and planning respective steps to combat the problem. And finally, we can say that the adoption of legislative amendments in 2019 on sexual harassment or on violence against women were also the result of effective demonstrating the problem based on the respective data. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ekaterina. Very interesting presentation. Now we go to the last presentation. Back to Poland, to Monica.
Hello.
Hello. You're going to take us back to your business indicators.
Yes, I'm ready.
The floor is yours.
So I try to share the content. Perhaps this time I'll be successful. Okay, I hope that's the one. Yeah. Okay, fine. So my second presentation consists of 3 parts. In the first part, I'll try to explain how the impact barometer was developed. Then, in the second part, I'll recapitulate very briefly its main characteristics and selection criteria. And finally, I'll move on to talk also very briefly on communication strategies and plans for impact barometer. So impact barometer is a result of multi-stakeholder cooperation, including Statistics Poland, as well as business community, academia, and NGOs. The whole initiative was started by CSR Consulting, which is a Polish company specializing in CSR strategies. And the project was conducted, I mean, the impact barometer was conducted under the bigger initiative called the 17 Goals Campaign. It is a national initiative for mobilizing business community and other stakeholders to enter cross-sectoral partnerships and take action for the SDGs. And impact barometer is one of the outcomes of this campaign. What is important is the fact that the whole campaign is conducted under the honorary patronage of the Ministry of the Economic Development. Statistics Poland's role in the whole project was quite unconventional, as it had little to do with the production of official statistics. I mean, Statistics Poland's experts provided methodological support and expertise in the field of building monitoring frameworks at dedicated workshops, also co-organized by Statistics Poland, and during open consultations. Finally, Impact Barometer was released on the Global Action Day, so on the 25th of December last year. And let me recapitulate very briefly. It consists of 30 SDG indicators for 6 SDGs, recognized as most relevant for Polish business by SDG experts last year. Among the experts, there were also experts from Statistics Poland. And as far as general selection criteria are concerned, so one of them is, of course, relevance to the monitored SDG. Universality, so we try to make the indicators as applicable to all companies as possible. Comparability, of course, across companies, which was ensured by a uniform methodology, and that was our part, I mean Statistics Poland's part. No additional reporting burden on the companies, and we try to make indicators easy to use and limited in number in order to encourage companies to report. The set is available on Statistics Poland's website on the National Reporting Platform, and also on the official website of the 17 Goals campaign. It is also disseminated in social media, including Twitter and Facebook. And according to the statistics generated by Google Analytics tool that Statistics Poland uses for monitoring traffic on the National Reporting Platform, it seems that Impact Barometer is the third most popular SDG item on our NRP. Impact Barometer is also presented at international and national conferences, for example, like Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. And last year, it was presented at the SDG Summit as a short video. As far as future plans are concerned, we will make collective analysis, and we will try to define SDG benchmarks on the basis of the individual results from the companies. And we will publish a report in collaboration with CSR Consulting showing the results, the aggregates, I mean. We are also planning to to use that experience for other projects related to SDG indicators. Namely, we are thinking of developing business SDG indicators for different size classes of enterprises, for different industries. And also we are planning to recapitulate that experience in developing subnational SDG indicators. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Monica. We're doing very well as far as time is concerned. There is an interesting discussion going on in the chat about Alison's presentation. So anyone who wants to know more about that, there are a lot of links there, reports on human rights-based information for disaggregation, among other things, which I'm very interested in, moving the one behind. We have Vivica from Sweden. She asks very many interesting presentations. She would like a link for the work on lead contamination. So, Lena, if you could put the link online in the chat.
Okay, I will.
People could read more about that, if it's available in English. I don't don't see any other questions. I have, as I mentioned before, I have a question for Monica. Your slide of your presentation, the corporate partners you're working with. We had a problem when we started being accused of unfair competition, sponsorship, because we're a government organization. We can keep our collaboration prices low. So other private research institutes were a bit angry that we were misusing our authority. Is that a problem you have in Poland, or did this sort of all go very well, this collaboration with the private sector?
From my perspective, the collaboration runs smoothly, and we haven't experienced such problems yet. Yeah, well, so far everything, as far as I am concerned, and from the point of view of statistics, Poland, everything runs smoothly. But the initiative is, as I've said, very young, and we hope that it will continue to work without any obstacles. Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Well, I may come some tips then if we start this up again. I see that the link, Ekaterina has provided the link, so anyone who wants to know more about the lead contamination in Georgia can obviously related things can look at that. I have another, I have actually a question for Ekaterina. In your presentation, you talk about collecting data from media outlets, which I found very interesting, because in this time of fake news, how do you select which media outlets to get reliable data from?
Thanks for this question. So we are monitoring all media outlets in Georgia. So we are not choosing certain ones. We are just monitoring all, and we are just choosing the cases if it is relevant to our work or not. So after we choose the case, we are discussing this case. We are like investigating, and the main source for our case law is from online media, from TVs, and also from social networks such as Facebook, for example.
Don't you then run the risk of there being too much, well, fake information, if you like? Because, I mean, social media is very, it's a very big risk, I think.
Yes, but we have specific direction in our work, which is proactive identification of human rights violations. And we have 9 regional offices working in this field. So in a daily basis, they are watching, like, not only media, they are also conducting some informational meetings with the population, but also it's their main task to identify some human rights violation cases from local media. And also our staff workers who are working in the field, for example, in the quality department, they are also trying to identify this kind of cases. And also we have systematized monitoring program, and one company is helping us in this field to identify all these cases and to provide the information in a weekly basis to our office.
It's very interesting. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat. I don't know if anybody has any more questions. Otherwise, I think it might be time to draw some general conclusions and wrap it up. Tina, I don't know what you think.
Yes, I think we can wrap it up, and then we can really finish in time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank all the presenters. I bought you some tulips from Amsterdam, but I'll keep them with me until we can meet face to face again. Never know in these trying times. I think what we've learned today is, apart from the fact that we can do this online, so but I like doing it face to face much better, we've seen a lot of interesting ways to incorporate supplementary data sources, organizations working together, national reporting platforms. We've seen how different perspectives can help in reporting on the SDGs. Obvious well, sort of obvious things like human rights and sexual harassment, but also less obvious perspectives such as lead contamination for the health of the population. Communication, how important communicating is, communicating the results across, obviously through the reporting platforms, across the different platforms. That's all I have to say. We will, as I said, we'll be incorporating the chat on the wiki, on the UNEC wiki, and we have recorded the webinar, so anyone who wants to watch it will be able to watch it in retrospect. And thank you all very much. I see at one point we had something like 65 participants online, I think from very many countries. So thank everybody for listening in and watching in. If you have any questions, you can get in touch with us and we'll be happy to answer. Thank you, Tina, for the technical support from Geneva and Stella from your WhatsApp support from Moldova. And hope to see you all soon face to face somewhere. Keep healthy, everybody. That's all from me.
So thank you, Linek, and thank you everyone for participating. I saw at the peak moment there was 77 people actually connected. And it proved that actually you can make a web meeting with so many people. So I thank everyone for the participation, but especially those people who then shared additional ideas, questions, comments, and links on the chat, because we got quite a lot of information also about this, those different vulnerable groups who can be left behind, and then how to go about trying to reach them with data. In the roadmap, the second edition that we are preparing now, the roadmap on statistics for SDGs, we will have a special section on Leave No One Behind. And Linek is actually the person responsible for preparing this section. So I hope that also Linek got a lot of additional good information that can be included. The questions and comments through chat worked actually quite well. So apart for a few technical things, which some of which we might be able to improve and some of which even not, because the technology has its own special ways of working sometimes. I hope that you enjoyed it and got a lot of useful information. So we will make all this information available on the wiki. We still have to figure out how to put online there the recording of this webinar, which we made, but we will do that. Wishing everyone that they would stay safe and healthy and get over this crisis as easy as possible, and then looking forward to see you all at some occasion face to face. So thank you very much, and with this we are concluding the webinar. Thank you and bye.